Welcome to the Whole Career Podcast with Advent Health. I'm Brandon Strawn, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sky Kellogg.
Each episode features conversations with various healthcare professionals who will share their personal career journeys, insights, and perspectives on various healthcare careers. From nursing to technology to leadership, we'll cover a wide range of topics to help you stay informed and inspired.
Whether you're just starting out in your healthcare career, looking to pivot, or a seasoned professional looking to take the next step, this podcast is for you. We hope to empower you with the knowledge and the tools needed to make a positive impact in your field. At Advent Health, we believe that we are greater as a whole, and we invite you to join us on this journey as we explore the world of healthcare careers together. Welcome. Today we have Bryan with us to discuss her nursing journey with Advent Health. We're honored to have you on the podcast, Brandi. Would you mind introducing yourself and giving us an overview of your current role with the company?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brandon. Well, as you know, my name is Bryan. I work at the Advent Health corporate campus as in the role of Director of Critical Care and Emergency Medicine. And what that role actually encompasses, it's kind of we work with all of the ICUs with Advent Health and also the EDs in Advent Health, and just work on how we can become greater as a whole. So talk with a lot of our ICU leaders, a lot of our ED leaders about best practices, also review some of like performance metrics and keep an eye on how we perform within the company among one another, but also looking at national benchmarks and how we look with other hospitals and other EDs and how we perform and just how we can continue to improve to just continue to give great patient care and a great patient experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So to start, how did you get your start in the healthcare field? Right, we want to just have you take us on a journey, and I know you have. How many years of experience do you have at this point?
Wow, I'm coming up on being a nurse for 20 years. That's hard to even think. But
Awesome.
I did not enter into nursing in the traditional approach. Growing up, that was not necessarily the career path that I thought of even entering into. My dad is a scientist, so I always loved science and math and really saw myself more going into natural sciences or biological sciences. So in my first degree, when I first went into to college, I went in as a pre-med student with the full intention of going to medical school. I was a bit of an introvert and thought that the lab would be a great place for me, or even the morgue, funny enough,
Oh, wow.
and wanted to be a pathologist. And so that was the direction that I was heading. But I am a firm believer that God takes us on paths of experiences and not necessarily always the vision that you have for yourself, that he has a
Right.
lot better and greater things in mind for you. And so when I graduated with my pre-med degree, 3 weeks later, I got married and moved halfway across the country. So needless to say, I did not go to medical school and actually helped my husband go through seminary. And in that time, just worked outside of healthcare completely and realized I really did want to do something with my pre-med degree, but wasn't quite sure and looked at maybe being a PA or a nurse. And so when I went back to school, chose to go into nursing. And I really think that some of the experiences that I had gained not working in healthcare were able to help me translate that in working in healthcare later on, that I wasn't the scared of people kind of person that,
Right.
I was okay with working with people who were in their most vulnerable time of need and not so much scared of a sick person or somebody that I didn't think that I could help. And I was not a blood person. Like blood scared me, but
Wow.
that's
So
good
so
for a
from
nurse.
not being a blood person to critical care. Who would
Yes,
have who would have thunk it?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, yes.
That's wild.
So yeah, so it was not your traditional approach of, getting out of high school and knowing that's exactly what I wanted to do. But I just think that it was a good way for me to really realize that's what I wanted to do as a career.
Yeah. So, Brandy, what were some of those roles that you had prior to deciding you wanted to go back into healthcare? Can you give us an overview of that and how you really feel that that helped prep you to get back into the healthcare field?
For sure, for sure. Well, one of my very first jobs was a copy girl. I worked at a mortgage company and did the copying. Not to say that that really helped anything other than troubleshooting when paper got jammed. But then I actually worked for a trucking company. So I worked as a first a receptionist and then a claims clerk. So finding lost freight and damaged freight and handling some of those problems. Went into inside sales and learned a lot of, we'll say, relationship techniques and I guess sales techniques as well. And then became a supervisor for one of the trucking terminals and a dispatcher. So learning logistics and also just learning how to manage people at a very young age. That kind of helped me, I think, translate in my career now. And then I was a dental assistant when I was in nursing school. So being able to just work with dental patients, and I worked for a periodontist, so was able to do some surgical procedures too, which was really where I thought my route was going to go in nursing. That I was going to be a surgical nurse, but the I guess the best role that I had in nursing school was once I had entered into my degree program. I applied to be a nurse tech in one of the local hospitals, and fully intended to be on one of the units where you had several patients and just assisted with doing daily living tasks and taking vital signs, blood sugars, things like that. And there was a position available in the CVICU, and it intimidated me so much because oh my goodness, ICU. And it was the best experience for me because it really gave me the opportunity to work with patients and a lot of other things, to be responsible for more than daily living tasks, and just kind of eased me right into when I graduated from nursing school that I was offered a job in that unit, and it just really fit everything that I felt met my personality, but also just that I had the skills to be able to handle as a graduate nurse, and I'm just so thankful and blessed that at that time, like, graduate nurses were not really accepted in the ICU. We've come such a long way since then, but at that time, you really had to be the I'll say be the best, or even have like 2 or 3 years of experience to
Right. Had
even
to
get
like pay
into the
your dues.
ICU. Yes, absolutely. So I know that was unusual, and I'm just so happy that they gave me that chance.
That's so amazing, the way that we think that we know exactly what we're going to do, and plans change, and then you're still able to rise to the top, and go into things that you never thought you would have. But just you mentioning the fact that how maybe nursing has changed, I want to go back a little bit to when you were at Midlands Technical College, right? Getting your ASN, and what that experience was like, because like you mentioned, not only has the options for graduates changed, but the type of degree that's needed, or what we would quote unquote say is needed, has changed as well. So what was it like when you graduated with your ASN? Was the outlook saying that you were okay to work with an ASN for years to come, or was, when you graduated with your ASN, did you already know that you needed to get that BSN in order to, in order to have your career grow? I guess it would be my question.
No, that's a great question, and I think as a career and as nurses, we maybe have done ourselves a disservice and not necessarily helping high school students or even students in middle school to really understand how do you enter into the nursing career field, because I've met a lot of nurses who started as CNAs in high school, and that's a great introduction to it, but then it's like, well, what is the best way? Do I become an LPN? Do I become an associate's degree nurse? Do I get my bachelor's degree? And at the time, for me, I was in South Carolina at Midlands Tech is where I went to nursing school, they actually had a better pass rate for the NCLEX than the university did. So that was actually why I made the choice, not because it was a faster path to necessarily become a registered nurse, but because I wanted to be well prepared pass the exam to become a nurse. I always tease that I kind of, did it backwards because I had a bachelor's degree in pre-med, then an associate's degree, and then went to get my bachelor's degree in nursing. But I think in my mind, that was always something that I wanted to progress to do. At the time, this is in the 90s, there weren't as many like online programs to be able to get your bachelor's degree. So going back or continuing on to get my bachelor's degree, I actually did not do until I moved to Florida at the time at Florida Hospital and then did the online program with now Advent Health University. But I always knew like that was going to be my next step. I think now that if you have the choice, now sometimes there is that bridge from an associate's degree to a bachelor's degree, and that's a great path. But a bachelor's prepared nurse, there are many avenues available for you as a bachelor's prepared nurse. There's also a good bit of obviously a couple more years of schooling, but evidence has shown that our patients have better outcomes when we have a higher percentage of bachelor's prepared nurses caring for those nurses. That's not to discount. I won't ever say that the associate's degree that I got in nursing didn't prepare me. It was very, very hands-on. It was theory-based. So I feel like I was well prepared. But I think as we move along, and especially as nursing, healthcare is complicated. That it really does help to have that bachelor's degree and have that time before you actually step in and are responsible for that patient.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, and Brandi, I know obviously we can tell by this conversation that you've always been driven to continue to pursue further education, but can you tell us a little bit as to why you decided to pursue your master's degree in nursing leadership and management? And can you talk at all about Advent Health assisting you in continuing your education?
I'll actually answer the second question to kind of begin into it. When I moved to Florida, it was for the purpose of working for Florida Hospital and then now Advent Health. And because we are a growing organization and obviously have opportunities for growth in your career. So I loved being a bedside nurse. There are times when I really do miss just being able to be in the room and be the one who makes a difference for that patient. There really is no other feeling than leaving the hospital, leaving your shift, and knowing that you made a difference for someone. And it's not that I don't necessarily feel that in my job today too, but it's a little different, right? But I came to Florida and working for Advent Health and for the intent of that I knew that I could grow my career. And so I was working, I had served in the role of being an educator in our unit and also an assistant nurse manager. And as I realized if I wanted to continue on in a leadership role, that I really would need to further my career for that. And for a master's in nursing or even advanced degrees in nursing now, I mean, there are just so many opportunities of being a nurse practitioner, being a nurse anesthetist, an educator, a clinical nurse specialist, and then in focusing in leadership and management. There's so many opportunities in advanced degrees, but I did choose for leadership and management because that really seemed to be the path that I was pursuing. And so Advent Health did assist not only in giving me the opportunities for taking on those additional roles of responsibility and leadership, but also in financial assistance, so for tuition assistance, which was very helpful.
Yeah. And Brandi, that brings up something else that I want to learn a little bit more about too, as part of your story. So how did you first learn of Florida Hospital? Did you find it online or did you have a family member here? How did you end up knowing that this is the place you wanted to be?
I wish it was one of great referral, but it actually was by a search engine. So looking and in the area, knowing that I wanted to live in Central Florida, we were Disney fans, so we came to visit here a lot. And so we said, if we wanted to live anywhere, where would we want to live? So we chose
Of course,
Orlando.
who doesn't want to live in
Yeah,
Disney, right?
exactly.
Yes, yes. So I actually tasked my husband, said, if we want to move, you find me a job where I can work in a CVICU, because not every hospital has that specialty of open heart surgery. So he actually found the job. But as soon as I applied, and I applaud our human resources and talent acquisition at that time, that within a day they were calling me and wanting to begin to talk with me. And then I was talking with the manager on the unit the next week. So it was not a very long process, and at least introducing what the job entailed. And then I'd say like a week or two later, we came down here to visit and see the actual facility. I know that's not the way it is for everybody, but because I was out of state, and it gave me a good excuse to come to Orlando for the weekend.
Right. Right. Yep.
Hopefully you
Yep.
got a Disney trip in there.
Absolutely. We did.
Awesome.
That's so fun. Thank you for sharing that, Brandi. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to talk about just the makings of a director, right? And we'll eventually get to exactly like the ins and outs of what you do right now, but thinking about it from a perspective of someone who may have on their mind like, hey, I do want to be a director one day. We see that been a staff nurse, you were then a nurse manager, CVICU director. What are some of the thought processes? What's the mindset, or just some of the things that they should, or this said candidate, right, should be thinking about if they want their career to end up in a director level position? But of course, like we talked about before, you have to pay your dues in some way. What does that look like? What did that look like for you? And maybe what should that candidate or, potential person be thinking about if they want to end up in leadership?
I think there were several things, and I mean, everybody's journey is going to be a little different. I think for myself, just being willing and available. I maybe something that I wasn't always interested in, like wound care, was not necessarily a passion of mine, but and on my unit there was we were beginning to work on how could we reduce pressure ulcers in our unit in our patients, and so I volunteered and said, hey, I'll be happy to be a part of said committee or group that's working on this. And so I learned a lot about wound care, and then also just again being available. But I also think if you just are there's one thing to just show up and do your job. I think there's another thing of showing up and wanting to make a difference, and sometimes going that extra mile, or being that not even for your patients but for your fellow nurses, just being that positive person, that person willing to help out. Just you can make someone's day, or you can break someone's day. So I think that helps too. And you get recognized not only by your peers, or at least respected by your peers, but also by your leaders. And so I think that's, and I'm not tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I think I see that also in other people who I've been around, who have kind of risen up in those leadership ranks, whether by title or by just role within the unit. And so I think that's a great start. Obviously, furthering your education or being involved in places where you can continue in your professional journey. So for me, it was really important to be a part of a national organization, as well as find a local chapter if one was available. So I joined the AACN, chose to become certified, which was nothing that was necessarily required of my job, but it just showed that I had that extra interest in the specialty that I was working in, and then got involved in the chapter. And at that point, it was just really going to meetings. But in that way, I met people, not just in my little bubble of my unit or my particular hospital, but even other Advent Health hospitals in the community, or even other hospital organizations in our area. And so, getting to know other critical care nurses and learning about their path and how they became in, or happened to be in the roles that they were in. So, learning from them. And the other thing that I had was a mentor, and in a role in a director role that I respected, and just same thing, asked them what did they do, what were the things that they made sure in their career that they did, not necessarily having to follow in those exact footsteps, but to be able to kind of have those things in mind and what were their priorities.
Yeah, and so just for the listeners, what is a two-part question? What is ACCN? And I hope I said that correctly. And then did you approach this mentor, or did this mentor approach you? Like, what was that, transaction like when you wanted to find a mentor?
So the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, so at AACN,
Oh, I said it
it,
wrong. Sorry.
that's all. It's all good. It's just a lot of letters. So, um, but yes, it's a national organization. Really, it's actually a very very large, not only national organization. They do have some international nurses who are a part of it too, but primarily a national organization for critical care nurses. And that I really did just. I was a part of the national organization, and going on their website was able to find a local chapter. That was when I was in South Carolina. When I was here in Orlando, though, they met right out on the Orlando campus. So it was actually a colleague of mine who said, "Hey, you want to come with me to a meeting?" So you never know the power of somebody inviting you. That you're not going to something all by yourself. Is how I jumped in and got involved and became a member there. And then your second question was my mentor. Actually, I approached my mentor just asking if I could have some time with them, and they had been my boss at one time, but they were no longer my boss. So there wasn't that. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily wanting to mimic what your boss is doing, but I think sometimes it's a little bit hard for a mentoring relationship. But at that time, they were in a different role, and so I was able to just ask, like, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time and just talk about? I'm thinking about doing this, and what do you think about that? It was when I was actually applying to be in a manager role, and so knowing that they had been in that role before, they were able to give me some good advice. And
That's
continue
awesome.
to. Still is my mentor.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great advice, and great advice, especially for those who are thinking of transitioning into another field or just joining the healthcare field in general. Keeping that in mind to always look for a mentor, someone to learn and grow from. So, thank you for sharing that, Brandi, and just some insight for our listeners. Brandon and I actually had the chance to meet Brandi at the AACN NTI, so the National Critical Care Conference. That's how we all connected, and why we were able to have her on the podcast today. So I want to talk a little bit more about your involvement with NTI. So what opportunities that has led you to, what doors that's opened for you, and then if you could talk a little bit too, if you don't mind sharing your presentation and how you were able to get on a national stage like that and actually have a presentation for an audience of nurses. I'd love for the audience to learn more about that.
So I had attended NTI several years, not all consecutive, but I'll say it was probably a good 10 years ago when I went to my first NTI. When I attended, I was impressed by those who were giving the sessions at we have breakout sessions, and some are an hour long, some are a couple of hours long, and thought, gosh, these people are so smart and they're doing such great things at their hospital. And then a few years I attended a few more years, and as I was there, I was thinking, gosh, we do these things. I mean, like the people that I work with are smart like these people, and could talk about what they're doing and teach about what they're doing. So it took a few years to kind of gain the confidence to finally submit application for being a presenter. But I just knew. Advent Health does such great things, and we aren't. I mean, we are on a national stage, but we're not. So if we have the opportunity to be on a national stage, why not share the great things that we're doing? So I honestly sent in the application thinking I've never really spoken it on a national scale. Like I've taught some classes of 100 people, but this is a little different. And so I thought, oh, they'll look at my application and be like, oh yeah, she needs to do some other things before she's ready for us. But they actually asked one extra question, and then once I said, yeah, sure, I can do that part of it. Then they accepted my application. So the application was really simple. Putting the presentation together was a little more involved, but what part of my role, which doesn't really fall under my title, I work with a lot of our inpatient virtual care. So we had been introducing some avenues of assisting with our nurse staffing with using some virtual care, and also having LPNs as part of our team and our team model. And so I wanted to share that because coming out of COVID, we knew that our resources for nursing have been a bit depleted. So how can we make it better for our nurses? So that was the premise of what my presentation was just on the thoughts and how we had done some of these new models of introducing LPNs into our team model, and then also virtual nurses into our team model, but also even going back to where we had virtual nurses for many, many years in our tele ICU program, and how that they could assist in helping our bedside nurses along with the virtual tele-intensivist that they had as well. So that was really what my talk was about, and just giving a showcase of the things that we're doing at Advent Health. Now, I'm not saying it was brand new ideas or anything like that, but neither is teaching heart rhythms, which is another session at AACN. So it seemed to be a topic of interest for several people, and it was a great experience for me. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to be able to present on a national stage, and it doesn't have to be somebody from corporate. That was, I think, is what was so exciting about going to other sessions and even at other conferences. And there's one for critical care nurses, but there's one for medical surgical nurses, and there's one for cardiac nurses, and one for neuro nurses. So I think and all the other stuff, I know I'm leaving a ton out, but I think that if you're doing something that you think is making a difference, put in a registration, or submit an article, or just even an abstract for a poster, just to get it out there, because we really are doing great things at Advent Health. And I think people should know that we're doing great things, and that we should be sharing that.
I agree. Definitely. Thank you, Brandi.
And it was awesome to just see you doing that. And of course, it's in alignment with the goal of Advent Health, right, to become a national household name, as we grow into the future. So just being on that national stage and sharing those things was awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about the virtual nursing, how that's going to be changing things, and where you see it going in the future?
Well, I think we all know virtual care, just in general, as something that's here to stay. We have our phones where we can visit with a virtual physician or a nurse practitioner at the touch of a button. And so for our patients, even in the hospital, I think it's become something that is not foreign to them anymore, and almost expected, that if there's a way to bring an additional care provider to them that may not necessarily be right there in the hospital or in their unit, that is their way to become more efficient to do that. So in virtual nursing, that's a bit of the premise of that is, what can we take off of the bedside nurse? That, I mean, there's so many things as a nurse that it is physically hands-on that you need to be in there with the patient doing. But what are some of the tasks that maybe we can offload from the nurse? So that's really what we're doing with virtual nursing right now. And as simple as it sounds, of doing the admission intake questions and documentation, and the same with some of our patient education, and even with discharge teaching. That those are things that I'm not saying anybody can do, but is that something that we can have someone who is a part of the care team, but is not necessarily, doesn't have to be hands-on there with the patient in the room, that can be accomplished using AV technology for a nurse to be able to do that with undivided attention, and not necessarily get a phone call that a patient next door needs assistance. So that is what we were really hoping to accomplish, is to be able to take some of those things off the plate of the bedside nurse to be able to really help them. But as far as virtual care, I mean, we are looking at so many other avenues outside of nursing that maybe we can also use that very same technology to bring providers into the room. So would that be even bringing translation services in? We already use a cart for that. If we have a patient who needs to see a consult for a doctor who may not necessarily be in the hospital every day, is there a way that if they don't necessarily need to lay hands on them for an assessment, can they see them in that avenue? Or even when we bring everybody together for a family meeting, and knowing that, like, maybe there's a family member in another state and another family member who can't come in until 8 o'clock at night, and then also the patient and then the physician. Can we use the AV technology to accomplish that? Just like we're doing right now on a podcast, right? So those are kind of the thoughts that we're thinking for future for virtual. And it's we use it in a lot of areas already, whether it's with a cart or with an iPad. But how can we really make it seamless for the team, where there really isn't the logistics so much of having to pull in an iPad and get it set up, or a cart and things like that. So that's kind of on the horizon of what we're looking at telemedicine. But there is already so much that we're already using, and hopefully making it better for our patients and also better for our nurses and providers.
That was a lot of info, and I'm hoping that our listeners understand. Like, this is, as you said, it's being done other places, but it still has so much room for growth. And I'm just really proud, as Advent Health, to say that we're leaning into these new ways of making sure that the patient is seeing, is being felt as if they're we're seeing the whole family of the whole patient, right? And we're extending past just what we can do in person, and providing those services. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And it just goes back to our service standards of making it easy. It's
Right,
not
right.
replacing anything. It's still, I mean, telemedicine is medicine, but how can we better connect and make it easier for our patients and our providers?
Definitely. And Brandi, as we're coming to a close of our conversation today, obviously you have had an incredible 20 years in nursing, right? I mean, you've shared from you've shared from, starting off in medical studies to now being a director here at Advent Health. It's been a journey, and there's lots of things I could say that listeners could pick up on that you would be proud of, based off of growing from someone who is an introvert and scared of blood to where you are now. So what would you say personally that you're most proud of when you look back at your career right now?
I think a lot of things. I can tell you, I never would have dreamt being doing what I'm doing right now. And I think the best part of it is that I love what I do right now. And I for the most part, have had jobs in healthcare and out of healthcare that I've loved. Now, some have been a little more challenging than others, right? Um, but I think what I'm most proud of is through it all that I've been able to still keep the priorities straight, and that my jobs have allowed me to do that. And that is to be able to have faith first, family second, and then work come third. Not to say that any of that work suffers because the other two come first. But I will tell you, and this is a little story. I've worked in 4 hospitals now in my career, 2 before moving to Florida, and then 2 in Florida, 2 Advent Healths. And I just remember one had been a community hospital, and one had been a Sisters of Charity hospital. And then on the day of orientation for Florida Hospital, and this was in November of 2008. No, 2008? Yes, 2008. It has been that long. I remember the chaplain starting us out in orientation and saying a prayer. And I remember almost coming to tears. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but to really know that I was working for a faith based organization who believed in being a faith based organization. And so I feel like that has been supported in my work. And so that means that if I feel like I can, if a patient needs prayer, then I'm free to do that. I'm not necessarily going to get uh, any kind of backlash from a leader for that. If I want to start a meeting out with a prayer, that's okay. If I want to share my faith, that's okay too. So I feel like it's just been such a great integration to be able to have that for the organization that I work for. Doesn't mean that we're not a business of taking care of people, and that customer service and that we do high quality work isn't also a high priority, but that we also know that we are extending the healing ministry of Christ. And that is something that we really do live out as our mission, and that we're able to do that as employees.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
awesome. I wanted just if you could take us into what exactly director, right, or I should say critical care and emergency services, some of the things that you all are doing well, right, and maybe some of the listeners, right, who don't maybe even work for Advent Health but are not sure exactly what nurses are doing in critical care and emergency services. So this is your time where you can kind of shout out your team and talk about like all the great things you all are doing well.
Well, I think we'll start out with ED. That is for a lot of our patients, like the front door of where they come in. Not many people walk through the front door of the hospital and go, I want to be a hospital patient,"
Right,
but
right.
usually it's in the ED. Now, sometimes they're in there for surgery and things like that. I think some of the things that we're doing well and working on is really being that when we walk in the front door, what is that experience that patients are coming into? It can be very scary, or it can be for some patients who visit us often, it can be very familiar for them. But trying to make that experience the same for every patient who comes through, knowing that some patients need a faster triage to get to see a doctor than others. I mean, it's not all like the TV, but sometimes it is. So that's really there's a whole lot more that goes on in the ED. Don't get me wrong, but obviously our nurses and physicians are well equipped and well trained for each of those things that comes through, and that as an emergency room nurse. I equate it to somewhat being like the ICU nurse, that there you do, it does take some additional training beyond what you learned in nursing school, because you really don't know what's coming through the door, and someone who looks okay when they walk in may not be so okay once you start talking with them and getting a little bit more um, uh, learning about that patient, whether it's with labs or diagnostics or vital signs, or even their history. So um, that's some of the work that we're doing really on the front end of our ED. And then in the ICU, some of the great things that we're doing. COVID really challenged us, as the nation knows, with our critical care uh, being just overloaded with patients with the virus, especially early on, and even with it hanging on. We still have patients who really who have had COVID in the past, survived it, but now are still very challenged with some respiratory compromise. And so we're really having a lot of back to the basics of, we had taken care of such complicated COVID patients, that in their care, it really was to just rest them, rest their lungs, you know, do all, I don't want to say keep the machines keeping them going. But now we're seeing, I don't want to say your more regular ICU patients, but ICU patients who aren't necessarily compromised with COVID, that we get back to the basics of trying to get them off the ventilator quicker and out of the ICU quicker and mobility. So I hate to say those are basic things, but sometimes when we've been so in the mindset of that we just need to rest patients and keep them stable, now we're having to kind of come out of that and be like, no, we've really got to get them mobilized, have them awake, get them off the ventilator as quickly as they're ready. So that's actually some of the work that we've been doing. But I'm just so proud of us because we really are seeing like our length of stay for our patients in the ICU, the time that they're on the ventilators, that's coming back down to where we saw it before COVID. And so that's really been a lot of the work that we've been doing it. And while it sounds so simple, there are just so many things that go into both of those things in the ED and in the ICU.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. You all are doing some amazing things. And I know that there's kind of like a new normal, so to speak, even after COVID. But you all are still doing an amazing job, in the new normal, right, of things. So we appreciate you.
Yes, there's nothing simple or easy about what you're doing.
At
So
all.
thank you.
No.
From all of us non-clinical team members, we thank you.
So I wanted to let you all know, all listeners, that Advent Health, we do have an awesome educational assistance program, which Brandi Bryan herself has taken advantage of. And through Advent Health University or some of the other additional universities that we're affiliated with or specifically partnered with, you have the option to get debt-free education and or tuition reimbursement. And it's a great opportunity. If you are full-time, non-clinical or clinical, if you're full-time, you have the opportunity to go ahead and grow your career through education. And then, of course, if you are a part-time, it would be a little bit less as far as the amount that you'd receive for reimbursement. However, we would still provide assistance. So two great programs that we would like you all to take advantage of. And especially if you are already a full-time employee, we partner with Guild. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to your manager. They would definitely know exactly who to get you in touch with to make sure that you take advantage of this. Or if you even have questions, we're partnered with Guild through educational assistance. They have advisors that will actually reach out to you. You can reach out to, and they'll schedule a call to go through all of the different options, whether you're working on looking for a certain school, or looking for a certain program as well. So just wanted to shout that out. I hope you all take advantage of that and everything that Advent Health has to offer.
Brandi, we will jump into our special segment of rapid fire questions. So we will run through them as quickly as possible. And I will start with coffee or tea?
Neither.
Wow. Okay. What's your favorite book or movie?
Oh, that's not even a rapid one. Oh my goodness. It's not a book. It's got to be a movie. I'm a Star Wars person in any of the Star Wars movies.
Okay.
Love that. Morning person or night owl?
I'm now a morning person.
Awesome. What's your favorite hobby outside of work?
Tennis. I'm not good at it.
Beach or mountain?
Beach.
Dogs or cats?
Oh, dogs.
I love the quick response on that one. What's your favorite food?
Anything Italian.
What's your favorite travel destination?
Hawaii was the best one.
How about your favorite season of the year?
Fall. We don't get it in Florida though.
Right. I didn't want to ask, but I was like, where is she experiencing fall? Because I think we live in the same area.
Appalachian region in the fall. I'm sure other places, but yes, fall colors are beautiful.
Okay.
And football season.
Oh, that is a good answer. What's your favorite app on your phone?
Favorite or most used would be my email, but favorite is probably Instagram.
Instagram, cool.
What's your favorite thing to do on the weekends?
Play tennis. I go play tennis on Saturdays.
Awesome. And lastly, what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
This is not rapid fire. I have one sibling, and he is 20 years younger than me. Same mom and dad.
Wow. Now that's a fun fact. Awesome.
Very
Awesome.
proud of him. He might be my baby, but I'm very, very proud of him.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. So, Brandi, I want to just wrap up with a final thought. As we look back at this conversation, what is one thing that you want our listeners to take away from it? How do you hope that your story has impacted them?
I think the thing that I would just love to share with everybody is just that while you may have this idea of what life is going to be like or what you expect it to be like, uh, don't always be so rigid to that. Allow for some fluidity, and things may not always be going the way that you think they may go or not. That as a I'll say, as a spiritual person, I know that God has His hand in everything that I do. I don't necessarily take that for granted that it's just going to happen, naturally happen, because I think hard work helps to pay off for, help pays off in the end. But also just by keeping yourself open. But I think one of the things I love following Andy Stanley, who is he's a pastor, but he's also a speaker and does leadership podcasts. And so listening to him, and I think what I've always kind of taken in mind is one of the quotes that he gives us, or that I kind of keep in mind, and it's in light of my past experience, current circumstance, and future hopes and dreams, what's the wisest thing to do? And I think that kind of encompasses the way that I've hopefully led my life so far and continue to lead my life, whether it's personally, professionally, financially, and all of those things. But I just think that you put in a little bit of it, but then have a little bit of faith in what may be in the future, and don't always be so rigid to that.
Thank you so much, Brandi. And that is something I know I personally can take to heart as well. And I'm sure many of our listeners can. It's hard to break free of that image we have of our lives at times. But wow, how beautiful has your life turned out because you chose to break out of that rigid idea of what you thought was in the future. So thank you for sharing just such an inspirational story for our listeners today. It's been a pleasure. I can speak for both Brandon and I to be able to spend time with you today and learn more about you. Thank you for listening to the Whole Career Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms to stay up to date with the latest episodes. And if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover down the road, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at Life at Advent Health. And until next time, take care.